So what is a permalink? What are the do's and don'ts, and how can you actually add it to WordPress correctly, right? So a permalink is short for permanent link, and it's basically a URL that you share with people. That's all a permanent link is, or permalink. And so some of the do's and don'ts, you need to make sure that you're using, well, I prefer to use the focus keyword. Google says that you need to be descriptive, right? So when you're editing like the slug, which is this little part after the root directory. So here is your root directory, and here is your slug within the root directory, which is what you can change. Google is saying basically you need to be descriptive with this area as much as possible. The reason I suggest that you inject your focus keyword here, so if I've got a focus keyword and I go into my WordPress, I click on rank math and then click edit snippet, I can see that I've selected my permalink slug to be digital marketing coaching because that's my focus keyword that I'm trying to go for. According to Google, is this descriptive enough? Am I being descriptive? Well, in my eyes, my interpretation, digital marketing coaching is descriptive in and of itself. Okay, so in most cases, you can theoretically get away with something like this, similar to their example where it says best coffee shops, and they're saying that that's descriptive. Now, John Mueller from Google, he says that doing this practice of adding the focus keyword is a very, very lightweight ranking factor. But to me, that just says it's still a ranking factor. Now, am I just ignoring that it's very, very lightweight? Well, probably, but if a ranking factor is a ranking factor, why not do it, okay? As long as you're not breaking the rules. Next up, don't jam your keywords together. So you need to use hyphens between your words, right? So if it's green dress, make sure you go green hyphen dress. Make sense? Next up, make sure that you're keeping your URLs lowercase, right? So they don't want to see any capitalized words, okay? And that comes from Google Search Central. So you can go fact check that and check that out. You need to keep your slugs. So as we described earlier, this is a slug. You need to keep them short as possible, right? They say between 50 to 60 characters. Rank Math says 50 to 70. If we go in here, it says out of 75, right? The reason for this is you don't want to truncate them on the search results. So what does that look like? So it's kind of dot, dot, dot. You'll see these dot, dot, dots in between the little folders there. Okay, and I'll explain what folders are in a sec, but basically it truncates. It doesn't show the full URL. Is this a good or a bad thing? Don't know. I don't really have an opinion too much on that one. So you can do whatever you like, but that's kind of like a conventional advice and make them short and readable. Keep your hierarchy shallow as possible. So a maximum of 2 folder levels. So a folder level could be /blog and then / the post name. So that's 2 folders. So if you think about it, this root URL, this is the root domain where you got the .co, right? And then you got a / which signifies a folder. And you got / again. If anything were underneath this would be in another folder. So we've got one folder here, and if you had, you know, something within this page, not that I would have, that would be 2 folders, and you got another / that would be 3 folders, etc. The reason that they suggest this to keep it shallow is to simplify crawling, right? So every day nearly, depending on your website, you will likely get bots and SEO bots and ad bots and all these kind of bots, maybe even AI bots like LLMs, like ChatGPT, crawling your website to see what's on it. And so it will usually have a certain budget that it plays with, right? So it can only stay on your website for a certain number of time, crawl a certain number of pages, okay? And that's kind of like their allowance. And so they will start to prioritize whatever is closest to the root folder as possible. So if you've got, you know, / digital marketing coaching, and then I've got other pages with just one folder saying / digital marketing consultant and / blah, 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 blah. It's going to scan everything in the first folder first, right? And if it has enough budget remaining, it might even scan within the next folder. So within folder 2, it will scan all pages that are at that level, and so on until it runs out of budget. That's kind of how it works. And so the idea is, just so that you don't take a risk, if you've got very, very important pages, do not hide them within subfolder and subfolder and subfolder. In that case, while I'm here, I want to explain, if you've got blogs, don't use categories, because then you're just creating an additional layer of complexity, and bots will, you know, it's not as good for your SEO in that hierarchy structure. Now, what's the next one? If you ever change a URL, this is a big one, always set up a 301 redirect. Because every time you change your URL, Google will treat it as a totally new page, and it'll like have amnesia that it totally forgets what you had on the previous URL that you just changed. And so it treats this new page like a totally, well, new page, right? So it's got no SEO value tied to it. It's got nothing. So you need to set up 301 redirects, but that doesn't mean that you automatically get to, you know, recover all your SEO rankings from the old page. I recommend, and Google recommends, don't change your URLs whenever you can. Just don't change them. This applies to when you're, launching a brand new website. Do not change the slugs in any way. Keep them exactly the same as how you had the old website if you can. You can do this and set up 301 redirects. I use rank math for this on WordPress. You'll have to use whatever you use on if you're using Shopify or Squarespace or something else. For e-commerce, try not to have unreadable ID numbers. So sometimes you might have some ridiculous numbers or category names and all this kind of stuff, like this one here, like separators on like category dress and all this kind of stuff. Try to make the URL as simple as possible so the bot can crawl it. Next up is structure your URLs. This is international SEO only. So if you do local SEO and you don't do international sales, don't worry about this. But if you do international sales or you got an online business, make sure you use, I prefer subfolders. You might have noticed that on my website where I've got / like in this case, it's DE for Germany. And then you've got pages tied to Germany, and you might have German words throughout the page, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you structure international SEO correctly in that way. Use hyphens. I've already kind of explained that. Instead of underscores, don't use underscores. And that's pretty much it. So what we'll do now is I'll go into WordPress and show you how to actually set up, if you've got a blog heavy website, how to actually set up the permalink structure correctly so that you use blog / blog in front of any post that you create. Because whenever you're running ads, you might not want to run them accidentally to your blog posts. So you can easily just exclude any page on your website from your ads that contains the word blog, and it makes things a lot easier. If you don't have a blog website, you can just use post name. So we'll go into WordPress. I'll show you how to actually, see this. So if you go into settings, permalinks, and then inside of permalinks, you scroll down to the bottom, and then you've got custom structure. So select that one. And then you'll see that I've manually typed in / blog here, so that anytime I post a post in the post section up here, it's going to add blog in front of it, right? So it's going to automatically dynamically pull post name in front of that. And then I've put a / after that, so that if you go over to my blog, we'll go over that together. Click on here. We've got my blog archive that's popped up. And then now if I click on any post that I've ever written, it will automatically put it under that naming convention. So it's very good for SEO. It's very clean. Now, Google doesn't really like repetitive URLs as much as you can handle it, and that's why I don't have a category. But if you don't have a blog-heavy website, you can just probably stick to using this kind of structure, right? Which is simply just stick with post name. That's even easier. But in my case, I just stick with blog, which I have to type in again, or I just exit the page, and I should be, so I go / and I should be good to go. So that's everything about permalinks. It goes really in depth and really super technical. As you can see, we could talk about this for a very long time, and it just gets really too technical. So if you got any questions, leave them below. Happy to answer them, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.